What's up, guys? This is Naxxion back with another video, and today I'm going to be talking about a little discreet comment that was in Duelist Advanced, Sudden Thunderous Swamp. Now, I remember when this card was first announced, and everyone in the Eldlich Facebook group was going nuts over this card. And at the time, I didn't really think much of it. I didn't think it solved or fixed the fundamental issues that I think Eldlich is currently facing. But in time, I've grown to kind of like it a bit more, but I have my thoughts on it. Basically, what this does is on activation, you can discard one to set a continuous trap from your deck to the field, except the card that you discarded. And then if a card you control is destroyed and sent to the grave or banished face up, you can target, I believe if a card is destroyed by battle card, if I can send the same name to the, you can target one, add one with the same name from the deck to the hand. So basically, if you're playing the Conquistador and it gets destroyed, you can use it to get another. And I'm pretty sure, yes. So you can only do the activation once to discard and set, and then you get that, and it's a continuous. Now, of course, applications. One, this doesn't play in the draw. And also it doesn't get ashed, at least with the important part, which is the first part of the effect. Also, it has applications for sticking onto the field, which it will naturally do, especially with something like Eldlich, where your cards are constantly going to get sent for the field, or they might stay on the field and your opponent might need to battle over it, because now with the threat of Chaos Angel, they have to respect that. But also, the interesting thing is that this also is actually, in my opinion, just a better Silhouette Rabbit. Silhouette Rabbit will still be important, of course. You know, it's another way to get into your deck, but it is far easier, in my opinion, to get interacted with than something like Sudden Thunderous Swamp. Sudden Thunderous Swamp also actually allows you to play the other continuous traps and actually will age quite well. You know, a lot of lists will play quite a few of the different continuous traps that exist in the game right now, and you will have the options in a traditional Eldlich deck with the Silhouette Rabbit, or any deck that really wants to do it. Of course, this is more center focused for something like Odeon and Eldlich, which you're going to be constantly summoning continuous trap monsters. They've become infinitely better. Not only are they far more searchable, but you can actually play more now, instead of having to sit and just say, I'm going to play exactly one. So if you wanted to play the Anguish pattern, the Pop 1, or even wanted to play something like Quantum Cat, the options are there. And, you know, it does give that diversity. Also, again, and since I'm focusing more on Eldlich, since I prefer that deck versus something like Odeon, I just wanted to go on the record to say, too, that it's really nice to have yet another card that just kind of pluses you and serves into that purpose. And, of course, for me, you know, I'm always thinking long-term for Eldlich. One thing that could become a potential, too, with a combination is even after this card, you can, if Diagram goes back to 3 and Masterpiece, you can actually play a set of this. And you could actually play Masterpiece and Eldlich, which would actually help that deck immensely, as you'll often be sitting on a bunch of cards, and you already have the grind. Masterpiece is enough to still win and cheese a game. Of course, the issue comes to mind, though, is since that is something that you can do, but I would not recommend it with everything at 1-1, is what exactly is going to be the ratio for Sun and Thunder Swamp? Well, if you're playing a 60-card deck, variant where you're not really playing the traps, you might be playing the grass with Zombie World. You have those options to play it, but I don't know if it's going to be the most useful thing. All of that said, that a zombie pile does want to have cards in the grave, so it does come up. But if you're playing a Trap Lich, which is something that I would play more or less, because I think, it's just my play style and my preference in that I personally believe Sudden Thunder Swamp is in content for how much you're going to actually play it. You know, there's an argument to play 1. You don't want to break on this card. There's an argument for 2. And for some people, 3. Because it can be considered as a very good, consistent card. For me, personally, I look at the card as 2 or less. I don't see a reason why you would want to play too many of this or that. You know, even as great as Delta of Invitation is for something like Eldlich, it feels especially bad drawing into multiple copies of that in the deck. So, that option is there. I think this is a really nice custom card. I think in the initial, when it was first announced and, the card was that, I still don't think this solves the issue of what Eldlich has. Eldlich is far too centered focused in its game plan, and because a lot of the trap cards are actually power crept beyond belief, Conquistador, Hakira, I'm not talking about those, but the staple traps, other than Daruma Cannon, I mean, Ice Dragon's Barrier is severely getting power crept, and a lot of new traps now are just not doing the job, and even then, even with the consistency cards, when I went to the regional and I played Eldlich, I realized firsthand that keeping Eldlich off the field was in fact the best thing to do, and I don't think this actually solves that issue. There's no insulation or protection from hand traps. Even though the deck can get around a lot, it still loses hard to stuff like Impulse and Ash and Bell. So to me, this is a fine addition, but it does not actually fix in terms of creating consistent board presence, and this is kind of that weird quasi line where something like this would in fact actually let you get into the engine more or less easier, as you can dump your Golden Land cards, but again, you can't dump your elixir, or sorry, you can dump your Golden Land for stuff, but if you dump your elixir, you can't actually get into the Eldlich engine itself. And even though it plays under a lot of hand traps, and about the only thing that can do something is Ghost Ogre, but that's after, of course, it's been activated, it still doesn't, for me, put the deck out onto a relevant scale. I mean, unless you're playing it with something crazy like of course, White Force, which, it's a crazy combination. I think this card is severely underrated, and I don't think there's been enough coverage about it in a singular sense. There's a lot of great cards that actually were announced, but to me, this one was interesting because this card really does read as an Eldlich card, but it innately in itself, while it, again, can get you into your engine, is not a technical consistency card. This card feels more flavorful, but, there's applications, of course, especially since it's a continuous spell. It does have a secondary effect, which isn't bad. I can actually see a lot more decks that like to pop their own cards using this and being able to just get whatever. I do think Sun and Thunders definitely deserves some testing. I'll personally be seeing myself to see how much it does. I could be entirely wrong, but I feel like it's in a very interesting spot. In my opinion, what Eldlich needs is consistency, but it needs to just do a bit more than actually just have Eldlich on board to be present. I did a video before about the Delta of Invitation with the Eldlich engine that feels way more stronger than, a lot of other pure variants for Eldlich itself. But this card definitely is solid. I definitely will be looking into it. I hope more trap decks get to eat well, because in the current, it doesn't look like there's really anything else. Of course, unless we get a random TCG exclusive in one of the other sets to come out this year. This looks like it's to be the end of the line currently for the trap decks and just generic staple cards, which we can't really complain. We got quite a bit. But please let me know if you have any other different thoughts, or if this card is cracked. And I'm just bad, as I've stated before, I'm very bad at evaluating blindly. Thank you for watching.